Now, my guest today on the podcast almost needs no introduction because we have been partners in crime on the Carbon Literacy Trust Marketing Sustainability Certification course. There's a mouthful, and we're going to try and unpick some of these things. So Nigel Clark joins me on this conversation to talk about really a marketing sustainability update. And we do these relatively regularly, every 6 months or so, it seems to be. And they are really kind of nice, well, for us, kind of milestones really, and sort of benchmarks, little kind of points in time where we can just stop and reflect and see where we've come from. And I want to tease out a particular thing that's been really burning in my mind for quite a few weeks with you, Nigel, which is this idea of, I guess when we first sort of started in this journey, we probably didn't think it was going to take so long to get so little a distance away from where we started. I mean, it seemed like an easy thing to do, like sustainability, carbon footprint, saving the planet, doing good for society.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all great things that everybody probably would aspire to do.
Yes.
And yet here we are, still pushing water uphill, still seeing negative stuff on LinkedIn and in the media. It's really hard, isn't it, this?
It is hard. Yes, you're right, Neil. And in some ways, pushing water uphill, you in any arena, you probably feel, I'm sure a lot of your guests that come on this program, and a lot of things that you work on and I work on, a lot of things you in your career or in your life, you wish to think this should be a lot easier. and so, perseverance, staying at things, sticking to your, a big theme of yours, sticking to your purpose, sticking to what you believe in, is key in life across all matters, but particularly in sustainability and climate.
Why do you think we're having to be so resilient and so stoic? Because, to you and I, it's kind of so obvious that this is the right thing to do and the right way to be. And yet there's either resistance or just almost sort of burying heads in sand, it feels.
Yes, well, so when I was thinking about our conversation today and we started to have this chat about, where are these sustainability or climate headwinds coming from, I kind of cast my mind back 10 years to 2015, which to you and I is, only yesterday, and a lot of the people who we work with will sort of think, gosh, 10 years, that's a long time ago. But that aside, if we cast our mind back to 2015, there were two very significant events that happened in the sustainability and the climate field. And I read actually still very much, and this is a positive, still very much a foundation stone of the climate and sustainability scene today. So one is the UN Sustainability Development Goals. They were established and adopted by United Nations, and as we all know, pretty much every country on earth is signed up to the United Nations. So the UN Sustainability Development Goals, the 17 goals, which sort of set out what we as governments, businesses, civil society want to achieve in terms of human progress, were adopted in 2015. And they are still the foundations of sustainability today. They have a target end date, all of the targets and KPIs and everything in there. They have a target date of 2030. So, we're getting towards the end of that period, but they are still the foundation stone of sustainability, 2015. The other big event of 2015 was the big climate conference in Paris, the COP meeting in Paris, the Conference of the Parties, the big annual climate fest. You and I are talking today with Glastonbury about to start, the big musical festival, COP, maybe not quite as exciting as Glastonbury, but the big climate festival, the big conference of international conference that happens every year. In 2015, it was in Paris, and Paris, as a lot of people will know, was the year that the international community, for the first time, committed to taking action on climate to keep the temperature of our planet below a certain level. The target, as was stated at the Paris Agreement, was to keep the rise in temperatures below 2 degrees, so 2 degrees more than pre-industrial levels. Whenever you see a target or a figure, or where are we now, that is always measured as a climate temperature reference to pre-industrial levels. So that target for Paris, which has kind of been translated into 1.5, people talk about the target as being 1.5. The actual Paris Agreement states that trying to keep it as low below 2 degrees increase as possible. That all goes back to 2015, so only 10 years ago. And we'll come on to some positives in a minute, but essentially the SDGs and the Paris Climate Agreement are still there. They're still the guiding light of sustainability and climate. So I think it's, whilst you can look at these from, you sort of said you've been reflecting on this for the last couple of months, we've been talking about it. I think it's important to take it in the context of, what has happened in that 10-year period, both headwinds and tailwinds. What's unfolded in that 10-year period, and where that leaves us today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great kind of background context, isn't it? Because, there's a lot of gloom and doom around this, but there is some very, very good stuff happening. Lots of good initiatives all over the world. We're not just talking UK or US centric here. We're very much looking, right across the planet. China, for example, allegedly has created more wind farms and solar power than the rest of the world put together, is kind of one often sort of quoted statistic there. And obviously there's lots of different statistics coming from many different commentators on this. I mean, from a sort of a marketing and business perspective, rather than a broader sort of societal perspective, where would you say the biggest wins have happened over that time? And probably the more kind of recent ones, because obviously that's something I think a lot of people are trying to hook into, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the establishment of the SDGs, the establishment of the Paris Climate Agreement, that really set the frame within which business operates, and it kind of established the playing field. And for the first time, I think businesses saw that not only was the international community, signed up and committed to this, because as we know, and this is not just an issue about sustainability or climate, it's an issue always for business. What business likes to see is they like to see a clear path ahead, some certainty. What they don't want is government, society, sentiment kind of flip-flopping, this one day, this the other. Businesses profit from making investments and then realizing the opportunities from those investments. So they need, we've done lots of work on strategy. Strategy is really about sort of, looking out, sort of seeing where the horizon is and identifying within your field of competence, where's the potential, where can you go, where can you invest, where can you move. And so I think 2015 established that landscape. It sort of said, right, climate is high on the agenda. A more sustainable economy is high on the agenda. And I think businesses looked at that and sort of thought, right, that fits with our kind of ethos. It fits with our purpose. It fits with what our people, with what our organizations would like us to do. But this is what our customers, this is what the market is looking for. It's what it's asking for, and therefore we can start to make investments in those areas to realize not only, you know, doing the right thing for the planet, not only aligning with our sense of purpose, but actually to do good business and make some money out of it. So those things, you know, were put in place. Probably, you know, I'm overplaying the significance of 2015, but that, I think that was the watershed moment. And we saw lots of really big corporate commitments, either in terms of what they were going to do to improve their own kind of footprint, either environmentally or socially or from a climate perspective, but also the big investments that they were going to make to move this whole thing forward. And we can talk about a number of areas, but really the big transformation that has taken place in the last 10 years is the energy transition, the shift from essentially our economy and our way of life being underpinned by energy from oil and gas, from fossil fuels, to an economy where the energy needs, be that how we power our homes or how we power our vehicles or whatever, essentially that shifting to be driven by electricity, and that electricity being generated by non-fossil fuel sources, things like wind. Primarily wind and solar have been the two big winners. There are others in the mix, and if you look at where our economy is globally, where our economy is here in the UK, the investments that business have made in that energy transition over the last 10 years, the picture is completely different. And if you'd said to people 10 years ago, this is where we're going to be in 2025, I don't think people will have believed you. There's a hell of a lot to do, and there's a hell of a lot of opportunity for businesses to go further, and we need to go further and faster, and, you know, all that stuff. But actually, we've made a significant amount of progress in that 10-year period, and most of that has come about not through government intervention. There is some facilitation of that from governments, but most of it has been driven by business economics, I would say.
I want to come back to that energy thing, because I think there's a really good decision point there for most businesses in terms of how, you know, within their whole kind of supply chain, with how they're making those decisions. But just want to hook into a word that you use there, which was strategy, which for me kind of is all about focus. Is it then just a natural kind of equation that sort of says, okay, if we're going to do this sustainability stuff, and Nigel's talking about strategy and Neil said about focus, should we kind of literally double down on maybe one or two things rather than almost thinking as a business we've got to try and do everything? Because I certainly pick up from a lot of people, this thing is perceived as really big. It's quite unwieldy. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of fear that, if we start, you know, spending too much of our resource focused on the whole sustainability piece, we're not going to be able to do business as usual. So is this strategy idea then that, okay, choose one, maybe it's an SDG driven thing that you're going to support, I don't know, clean water, for example, as an SDG, and then see how that then ripples down into your strategy to select one strategic focus and take that forward? Because that would feel like really clear, wouldn't it, for a lot of businesses?
I mean, strategy, the two words of strategy and focus go very, very well together. I don't think anybody in any arena outside of sustainability, just if we were having a conversation about business strategy, you know, I don't think anybody who was advising on strategy would sort of say, well, just bung some stuff at a wall and see what sticks. You know, that kind of like, let's just see what happens. You know, that doesn't feel very strategic. I think if I can take your point and shape it a little bit, it would be that I think businesses should, whether they have an interest in sustainability or not, what they should do is, all of the things that good business practice tells you, which is understand what you're good at, understand what your customer wants, and bring those two things together, not go off on a different path just because it kind of looks interesting, or you've read something about it, or you've seen something on TikTok and you sort of think, oh, I might wander over there. You should stick to what you're good at within the context of how that fits into your market. I think what the best businesses have done over the last 10 years and should do going forward is understand, okay, I'm in this market. This is what I think I'm good at. This is what my customer wants. How do I do that more sustainably? How do I do that in a way that has less of a negative impact on the planet, less of a carbon impact? I listened to a very good interview the other day with somebody who was the head of sustainability at a consumer goods company, and a brand that we would all know and probably all use. And she sort of said, we have to understand that we are a consumer goods company, and we have to know what our customers want, why they buy our product, what they like about it. Those are fundamentals. We then need to understand can we get a better tie-in with our customers by going with them on a journey to be more sustainable. So to come back to the point that you made about hooking into one of the SDGs, I wouldn't start with the SDGs. I would start with your own goals, your own objectives, your own core competencies, and then think about, okay, what is it in terms of our environmental impact, or our social impact, or our climate impact? Where does that tie in maybe to the if you want to use the Sustainable Development Goals, then great. There are other ways of coming at this, but then think about, okay, how do I do all the great things that I'm doing, but how do I do them more sustainably? And by doing them more sustainably, can I develop an even better relationship with my customers? Because I fundamentally believe, and we've probably talked about this before, one-to-one on this show, I really believe that if you get it right, this can be something which not only is good for the planet, or however you want to phrase it, but actually develops competitive advantage and ties you into a stronger relationship with your customers. So it is a strategic issue, but don't set a corporate strategy and set a sustainability strategy. Don't think about these two apart. Think about them together. Sustainability can be part of your corporate strategy, but your corporate strategy should, you shouldn't be able to unpick one from the other.
That's interesting, isn't it? And I guess it's kind of a really smart way of doing this, because doing the kind of inside out rather than outside in approach means that you're dealing with and talking about and sharing stuff internally as a team with things you already know and things that you've already gathered evidence for. You kind of know where your baseline is, where you're starting from. And of course, when it comes to things like that, that's kind of elephant in the room, the concept of greenwashing, then at least if you're using stuff and talking about stuff and trying to improve things where you've already got the evidence, you're less likely to fall into the greenwash trap, aren't you? Because it's measurable already. You're already doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to somebody recently, and I think we've talked about it on our carbon literacy course. Is companies that get pulled up for greenwash, are they deliberately trying to pull the wool over people's eyes? Are they deliberately trying to position themselves as more environmentally friendly or more climate friendly than they actually are? Or are they just being a bit stupid? It's a bit harsh, but are they falling into the trap unwittingly? And I think if you follow the whole thing around greenwash, and if you look at examples of where companies or businesses have been pulled up, it's more the latter than the former. Yes, there are, I won't name them, but there are some oil and gas companies that have put out adverts that try and make out that they're making massive investments in the energy transition, when you look at what percentage of their capital expenditure or what percentage of their investments are going into green energy, if we can call it that, and it's tiny. So they really are trying to sort of say, don't look at us over here, just look at that really little thing that we're doing over there, So that I think that for me falls into the first category. They know what they're doing. They're trying to distract us. They're trying to make out that they are a lot greener or a lot better for the planet than they actually are. But I think most businesses are falling into the trap of they have a plan, they have a strategy, and then somebody comes along, unwittingly, sometimes it's the marketing community, and kind of goes, oh, can we make this look a little bit greener? Can we emphasize the greenness of it? Oh, we're trying to do that. Oh, that's really good. Let's talk about that. And before they've done anything, or before they've achieved anything, or before they've hit any of their targets, they've kind of flashed up, and we're going to be carbon neutral, or we're going to save the orangutans in Indonesian forest. And they have really good intentions, but it's not integrated. It's not planned. They don't talk about, to use the hackneyed phrase, we're on a journey and this is where we are and this is where we aspire to get to. They try and overemphasize the greenness of what they're doing. And they're not trying to mislead. They're just kind of, exuberant in some cases. But, greenwash just doesn't wash.
So there feels like there's a little bit of a theme manifesting here, and this is an interesting one, actually. I want to kind of tease this out if there is something that I'm picking up here, because we're talking about, obviously, impact of fossil fuels. We're talking about kind of fear. We're talking about things where decision making maybe sort of flip-flops between two different perspectives. We're talking about maybe overhyping stuff. I'm going to use the word Trumpism. I have to use it, because if I combine all of those four things, certain members of the audience will think, hold on a minute, I recognize this. And others will say, that's not Trumpism at all, because, doing great stuff. Do you have a view, Nigel?
So anybody who came to watch us or listen to us today and wanted to play buzzword bingo, we've made it for over 20 minutes without mentioning Trump. So I'm just going to pull us back. I'm going to, if you'll indulge me a moment, I'll take us back to where we started, which was kind of 2015. So what we had back in 2015 was we had a stable kind of relationships on an international community level. And I know that that feels like a lot more than 10 years ago. But we did. We were pre-COVID, we were pre-Ukraine war, we were pre sort of all of the tensions that have been raised not by Ukraine but by Gaza and other international conflicts. We were in a world where I suppose the sort of governments of the world didn't look the same, but they were kind of getting on. We were post the financial crisis, but the ramifications, the impacts on our world of the financial crisis had not sort of snowballed through in terms of the political situation we have today. What we have today is across many countries a kind of rise in, I suppose, what you would call populism, or a rise in, which is probably fairer to say, is people getting up and sort of saying that world order, that sort of social democratic international order isn't working for us. We want an alternative. We want to see something that is better for us, not perceived as just being better for a few. And that has manifested itself in a number of ways. And one of it is the rise of Trumpism and Donald Trump himself. And what has come with populism is a kind of cynicism around climate and sustainability, which is seen as part of that sort of the old world of, trust us, international order, we're going to move forward together. It's more isolationist. It's more, it's not just make America great again. It's kind of, just me in the short term. But what also seems to have come with populism is a sense of, you can communicate with people and sort of say, you can have everything. You can have the cake and you can eat it. You can blow your own trumpet, and as long as you blow hard and fast and over promote yourself, but don't back down if people criticize you, then you can. And there are echoes of that in Greenwash, really. I mean, I wouldn't say the two are the same things. And arguably Trump is not trying to sort of say, we're doing all of this great stuff, because in 3 months or so in power, he has completely unpicked and taken apart, not unpicked, it's sort of taken a scythe to any support that the US government was giving to the climate and sustainability agenda. But those echoes of it's all about the promotion, you could see in both arenas.
And so, I mean, obviously, as you're adhering to that, Nigel, is everything, and always has and always will probably continue to do. It goes in cycles. So we're at a certain point in this cycle of popularity or otherwise, depending on your viewpoint, of sustainability, particularly within, marketing and business circles. And I guess another distraction, which probably arguably is not going to be a cycle, it is going to be here in whatever form, is AI. Now, of course, once you put AI into the mix here, I mean, wow, that is a shiny new toy for many businesses and business people. that is going to be yet another reason why, I need to focus on this today. The sustainability stuff, yeah, we'll put that into our plans for next year. We'll do something a little bit later, because this is now AI and immediacy. There's a need to do this because of competitive edge or whatever it happens to be. This is yet another headwind, isn't it?
I think it's that. So you can find endless commentary about the intersection of AI and sustainability. I hadn't really thought about that kind of business focus and whether the rise of something, such a potent topic of like AI just means it distracts people from thinking about other areas of their business. I use this quote quite often, but the old chief exec or chairman of General Electric, Jack Welch, who used to be a kind of business icon back in the last century, his sort of style of management is less popular these days, but he had this quote that I always hold on to, which is that he used to say to his management teams, I do expect you to be able to pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time, which for me meant, if you're a business leader, you should be able to think about more than one thing at once. It's focus is important, but just thinking about one thing, you should be able to manage more. So I'd like to think that even if AI has become, the topic du jour, that business leaders can think about other things at the same time. But in terms of the intersection of AI and sustainability, people are very much in two camps at the moment, and I think the outcome is, as is always the way, somewhere in between the two. So in one camp, you have this stuff is using a shed load of energy, and that has a really negative environmental impact. We've seen the big tech companies who very much were the sort of stars of the environmental and climate movement in particular, because they made huge commitments about reducing their carbon footprint. And we've seen Google and Microsoft's targets for climate reduction, blown out the water by their energy requirements around AI, powering, cooling all those data centers. There is, some mitigation on that side. The share price of nuclear companies in the US have gone through the roof, as all the tech companies are sort of saying, oh well, we're building all these data centers, can we put a sort of small modular nuclear plant next door to power them? They've signed huge contracts around wind, solar. I think there is the area that people seem to be most concerned about at the moment is water use for the cooling of the data centers. So one side of the equation is AI is bad for the planet because it uses so much energy. Personally, I'm a climate optimist. I think we will solve that. I think the Googles and the Microsofts of this world will not be at all happy if all our climate targets kind of crash because of their action. The other side of the equation is, if I just use, there's lots of examples, but the energy transition essentially means, rather than very sort of singular power systems where you have a single electrical grid powered by sort of a few massive coal stations, coal-fired power stations, very simple sort of system, huge but very simple system to run. Now you've got lots of sources of power, solar, wind, the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow. You've got lots of batteries in there to help. You've got, different, the electricity grid looks really difficult. How the hell are you going to manage that and optimize your electricity grid? AI, AI can do that in the way that we as humans will struggle enormously. So there's two examples there of, on one side, the energy transition is crashed by AI. The other side of the equation, the energy transition is enabled by AI. So I think the intersection of AI and sustainability is way more complex. And being an optimist, I think we'll solve it out, and AI will prove to be a positive. I think from the business point of view, I would like to think that, again, and I'm sure you're talking to lots of people about this, you don't set up a AI, standalone AI strategy. You integrate AI into your business and into your strategy. And I would like to think businesses can do that with the AI. They can do it with sustainability. That they can bring this into a clear picture of their business going forward and how they succeed and where their competitive advantage is. And it's a more AI enabled business. It's a more sustainable business, but fundamentally it's what that business is good at and what its customers want.
So would this be a really good kind of starting point then for somebody who is relatively early in the journey then? Because obviously a lot of people listening to this may think, okay, this is all very well if you're an established business, been doing this for a while, you're on the journey, you've got reports, you've got targets, etc. But if you're kind of early in the game here, and what you're saying and being consistently saying, Nigel, is this idea of starting within things that are in your control, so existing strategy, existing plans. Yeah. Being a climate optimist and moving from these kind of headwinds into maybe some tailwinds, is it about looking at maybe where some of the pain points are within your business and thinking, actually, if we were really smart, we could flip that and that would be more sustainable? So actually, rather than looking for all the good news, you actually search out some of the things that either aren't working or where you feel there are improvements that could be made. And you think, right, if we flip this, there's an improvement. We can report that. We can celebrate it. That seems like a logical starting point, really.
I think it does. That on our carbon literacy course, we talk to people about if you're in a business, thinking about not only where are the quick wins, where's the low hanging fruit, but also where are the bigger impacts? Where are the things that you can work on that it's going to take more time to get there, but are more fundamental to your business and to your customers? Because ultimately, most sustainable, if you look at businesses that are considered, best practice in terms of how they have gone about reducing their climate impacts or improving the sustainability of their business model, they're more long-term focused, they're more efficient, they waste less resources, which is cheaper, they have better longer-term relationships with their customers, be that end consumers or along their value chain. They're just better businesses, and they are setting a strategy that is not something that just happens in a couple of weeks or in a couple of months, but something that happens for the long term. I think one of the most interesting things about, we won't use the T word too often, but one of the interesting things is, particularly in the sort of climate and environment arena, although the current US administration is, mouthing off here, there, and everywhere. Businesses on the whole are not pulling back on their commitments. They might be pushing some things out, but I think they still largely, even big US businesses that are liable, to be in the sights of their political masters, I think they're recognizing that this is a long-term trend, that this is the right thing to be doing for the long term, for the health of their business. You talk, I think I maybe overplaying things about, are you on the right or the wrong side of history? But they know that they're on the right side of being a good and successful business by pursuing this. And they're not looking at the last 3 months and the next 3 months. They're looking at, the last 10 years and the next 10 years. So they might be going, there might be a bit of green, people who are familiar with the discussions about greenwashing will have heard this phrase green hushing, which is where people underplay their environmental, their climate achievements. There might be quite a bit of green hushing going on, but I think you find very few, if practically no examples at the moment of corporate leaders coming out and going, we're changing direction completely. We're ripping up our climate targets, or we're going to just forget any of our strategies around being more sustainable. That's really not happening. So I think we are at a certain place as of June 2025, but I think as we roll forward, I think good businesses will continue to want to be better businesses.
And I think it's a lovely phrase, that be a better business, because it just then re-emphasizes the fact that this proliferates way across the organization, and obviously, as we've said already, into supply chain, which is really key.
And if I can kind of bring into it kind of one other which reinforces that point, which is, if anybody questions whether the energy transition is going to continue, or whether businesses' actions on climate or the environment are going to continue, then you mentioned at the beginning that point about how much new solar and wind power is going into China. I would just encourage people to go and look at, and you can find all this stuff online, or you can get in touch with one of us, or you can come on our climate course. The economics around the energy transition are irrefutable. Even if you don't believe that climate change is happening, even if you love old school oil and gas technology, even if you think all of this stuff about greenhouse gases is rubbish, even if you've got a horizon of short-term profit, you will invest in wind, solar, other forms of renewable energy, because it is cheaper, and that is not going to change. The economics have, within the 10-year period that we've been talking about, the economics have completely shifted. 10 years ago, it was being driven by government policy, government regulations, government incentives. Today, it's being driven by economics, and right across the globe, particularly in developing nations, but right across the globe, people are building primarily solar, because that's the technology. Here in the UK, we're in a windy world, so wind is the main driver. But across the globe, solar is just knocking every other technology out of the park. So, oil and gas, fossil fuels is a 20th century technology. The 21st century technology is renewables, and particularly solar. You may have heard this phrase about the shift to being electro states. So electricity is taking over the world, and businesses fundamentally are about what is the opportunity for the future, not if in any business you are attached to what people bought yesterday and are not focused on what people are going to buy tomorrow, then you will be yesterday's business. You won't be tomorrow's business, and that's what's happening now. And that shift is irrefutable. That nobody will stop that.
Reasons to be climate and sustainability optimists, and I think Nigel,
I thought you were going to echo Ian Jury there and sort of say.
I did think it. I felt myself going there, and I thought most of the audience will not remember that.
People will be kind of go, what does reasons to be cheer? Who's Ian Jury?
What's that about? Yes, yeah. We'll put the link below. Now, the links that we will put below are, because we've mentioned it quite a few times, the link to the carbon literacy course that Nigel and I host every month with Cambridge Marketing College. And also what I'd like to do as well is to put a link to your LinkedIn profile, Nigel, because you do a sustainability update, don't you?
I do. Every month on LinkedIn, I publish or post the things that I've been watching, listening to, and reading over the past, because this moves so quickly that I can't keep up. So yeah, every month I recommend 5 or 6 different things that I've read, listened to, or watched in the past month. And my latest edition of Sustainability Insight came out yesterday.
So there's a reason to connect with Nigel today. Link is below. Nigel, it's been a great conversation as always. I always learn so much, and I love the anecdotes and the metaphors and everything else, because it just, I don't know, makes it very real for me, and I'm sure everybody else. So thank you again for your time.
Thanks, Neil. Always good to catch up.